this week's office hours, ESG and ESGCV. My name is Shavonna McCaleb, and I am today's moderator. If you are just joining us, please go to the chat and introduce yourself with your name and the region you represent. As a reminder, this office hours is being recorded for public record. Next slide, please. How to ask the question. All questions must be submitted in the chat. Please type your organization and question into the chat box. The team will read questions out loud at the end of the presentation and will provide answers throughout the presentation in the chat or out loud if time permitting. As time allows, we will also unmute folks to ask questions live. Alongside our presenters, we also have several HCD staff, including ESG representatives, ESG-CV grant administrators, and other consultants who can help to answer questions during the Q&A session. If we cannot answer a question, we will either get back to you or recommend that you complete a HUD Q&A. Next slide, please. Please note that both the slides and the recording will be sent to all participants within 1 week of today's session. Next slide, please. Today's office hours session agenda includes the following: ESG updates and resources, ESG-CV updates, office hour updates, upcoming trainings, ESG and ESG-CV Q&A, and today's spotlight session is ESG components by eligibility and services. Next slide. And now I will hand it over to Anthony.
Good morning, everyone. I hope your Wednesday is off to a great start. Just a real quick announcement that the BOS award announcements are anticipated to be announced later this month. Sarah is doing her final review of the applications and will announce them sometime in the next couple of weeks. Next slide, please. And as always, here are your ESG team representatives who can assist you with any questions you have on the ESG program or on your submitting your RFFs or program guidelines. You can also reach us at the ESG NOFA inbox listed below. And just a quick heads up, there has been a restructuring as Tuesday Cool has been promoted to a specialist position, and now she is handling some specialized accounts. And so Diana, Sam, myself, and Giovanni, we are in the process of reaching out to our contacts to let them know if we have taken over their account or not. And with that, I hope you have a great day. Next slide, please.
You're on mute, Shavonna.
Thanks, Chris. ESG-CV updates, reminders for performance milestones. Final drawdown deadline is 3/31/2024. Final RFF must be submitted April 15th, 2024, and agreement expiration date is 6/30/2024. Next slide, please. Upcoming office hours include on 3/13, leveraging and braiding funds; on 3/20, documenting VAWA compliance; on 3/27, travel toolkit. Next slide, please. At this time, are there any questions?
There are not.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Next slide, please. How to contact us if you have any further questions. Please reach out to your annual ESG. Please reach out to your ESG representative or ESG NOFA at HCDCA.gov, or for ESG-CV, please reach out to your grant administrator. Next slide, please. Now, let's turn our attention to today's Spotlight series, ESG components by eligibility services. Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Shavonna. Hi, everybody. We're really glad to have you here today while we talk about the components for eligibility services. My name is Kristen Delkamp. I am a California HCD ESG-CV grant administrator. My pronouns are she and hers, and I am found in Orange County, California. Back to you, Shavonna.
Thank you, Kristen. Again, my name is Shavonna McCaleb. I am a grant administrator. My pronouns are she and her. Next slide, please. What is the purpose of today's office hours? Well, glad you asked. We will cover street outreach, emergency shelter, homeless prevention, and rapid rehousing. The purpose is to provide a refresher of program qualifications and services to existing staff. Next slide, please. We will start out with street outreach component. Eligibility. ESG funds may be used for costs of providing essential services necessary to reach out to unsheltered homeless people, connect them with emergency shelter, housing, or critical services, and provide urgent non-facility based care to unsheltered homelessness people who are unwilling or unable to access emergency shelter, housing, or an appropriate health facility. To be eligible, you must be literally homeless. This is an individual who lacks a fixed regular nighttime residence, such as public or private place not meant for human habitation. This also includes individual or family who is fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, has no other residence, and lacks the support networks to obtain other permanent housing. Next slide, please. Projects are required to document eligibility for ESG CV and ESG street outreach in the same way as other ESG funded projects. While HUD priority or verifying homelessness is third party first, self-certification second, and staff certification second, and self-certification last, HUD recognizes that third-party documentation is often not feasible for ESG street outreach. Therefore, self-certification is always acceptable. I would also add here that staff certification is also acceptable. It is also important to note lack of third-party documentation must never prevent someone from receiving ESG street outreach services. Next slide. Services. Essential services for street outreach is engagement, case management, transportation, services for special population, cell phones, PPE, emergency health services, emergency mental health services. Other services also include hazard pay, hand washing stations and portable bathrooms, volunteer incentives, training, laundry services, vaccine incentives, and CES. Next slide, please. Next, we will look at emergency shelter and the eligibility for it. ESG funds may be used for costs of providing essential services to homeless families and individuals in emergency shelters, renovating buildings to be used as emergency shelter for homeless families and individuals, and operating emergency shelters. For this component, you must be literally homeless. It is also an individual or family who lacks the fixed or regular nighttime residence, meaning a public or a private place not meant for human habitation. It is also someone living in a public or private operated shelter designed to provide temporary living arrangements. It is also is anyone who is existing in an institution where they resided for 90 days or less and resided in an emergency shelter or place not meant for human habitation immediately before becoming a client. It is also an individual or family who is fleeing or attempting domestic violence, has no other residence, and lacks the support networks to obtain other permanent housing. Also, an individual who is at individual or family who is at imminent risk, meaning they will lose their housing within 14 days, has no subsequent residence, and lacks the support network to remain housed. Next slide. Again, projects are required to document eligibility for emergency shelter in the same way as other ESG funded projects. As we mentioned before, HUD recognizes that third-party documentation is not feasible for emergency shelter in most cases. Therefore, self-certification is always acceptable and lowest barriers, self-certification is fine. This includes like a sign-in sheet at the door of the emergency shelter. Again, lack of third-party documentation must never prevent someone from being immediately admitted to a shelter. Next slide, please. Some of the services, essential services are case management, childcare, education services, employment assistance and training, outpatient health services, legal services, life skills training, mental health services, substance abuse treatment services, transportation, and again, PPE. Shelter operations include maintenance, rent, security for emergency shelter, fuel, equipment, insurance, utilities, and supplies. Some additional services are temporary emergency shelter acquisition, major rehabilitation, hazard pay, training, other shelter costs, which include hotel, motel, renovation, conversion, TES to ES to emergency shelter, volunteer incentives, vaccine incentives, and leasing an existing real property or temporary structures for TES only. Next slide. And now I will turn it over to Kristen.
I should come off of mute so I can be heard. Thank you so much, Shavana, for kicking it over to me. I'm going to talk a little bit about homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing. These are concepts that can be confusing at times, but the one thing to keep in mind is that rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention offer the same housing and services, but to completely different populations. And we're going to be going through what this looks like in the next slides. So the thing to keep in mind with rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention is who they serve. Rapid rehousing is for people who are homeless, and we'll go into the definitions of homelessness in a few minutes. Homelessness prevention is for people who are currently housed, but without homelessness prevention assistance, they will become homeless. Both programs can serve individuals and households fleeing domestic violence. The same rules apply. If they're attempting to flee domestic violence and are unhoused, then they would be served with rapid rehousing services. If they are attempting to flee domestic violence and are currently housed, whether in their own home or perhaps residing with friends and family, but are at imminent risk of losing that housing, then they would be served by homelessness prevention. Let's get a little bit more in depth with the client eligibility criteria to make it more clear. So rapid rehousing can serve individuals and households that meet categories 1 and 4 of HUD's homeless definition. Category 1 is what is traditionally thought of as homeless, meaning that the individual or family lacks a fixed regular nighttime residence and that they are living either in a shelter or a place not meant for human habitation, such as a car, storage shed, outdoors, etc. Category 1 also includes those that are exiting an institution, like a correctional facility where they resided for 90 days or less, and they were living in a place not meant for human habitation immediately before entering the institution. Category 4 encompasses those that are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence and who also meet the category criteria for Category 1. This is important because it can help to determine some additional benefits from which a participant might benefit if they are in the situation where they're fleeing or attempting to flee from domestic violence. So let's switch gears and look at homelessness prevention. We know that rapid rehousing is for those that are already homeless. Homelessness prevention can serve those that fall under HUD's Category 2 or Category 4 definitions. There's also another definition that we're going to look at on the next slide. Category 2 indicates that a person or household is at imminent risk of losing their primary nighttime residence. To be clear, this means that their residence will be lost within 14 days of the date of application for assistance. It also means that the individual or household has not identified another residence and that they lack the resources to obtain other permanent housing. This could be cash, connections, or something else. In addition, homelessness prevention can only serve the most financially needy households, those that are at or under 30% of the area median income. Category 4 includes those fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence and who meet the definition of Category 2, that they will imminently lose their residence within 14 days and are at or under 30% of the area median income. Like with rapid rehousing, some benefits may be available to Category 4 participants, such as an emergency transfer, which can be used to pay to break the lease so that a DV victim can move from an unsafe situation. Now let's talk about the third definition, which is the at-risk definition of homelessness. Homelessness prevention defines this as somebody who is at 30% or below the area median income, who lacks the resources or support networks to prevent them from experiencing homelessness, and who meets one of the following 7 conditions. Can be one or more. They have moved because of economic reasons 2 or more times during the last 60 days, immediately preceding the application for homelessness prevention assistance. They're living in the home of another because of economic hardship. They've been notified in writing that their right to occupy their current housing or living situation will be terminated within 21 days after the date of application for assistance. And keep in mind that for at risk of homeless, we're talking about 21 days. For imminent risk of homelessness, it's 14 days. The individual or household lives in a hotel or motel, and the cost of that stay is not paid for by charitable organizations or federal, state, or local government programs for low-income individuals. So, for example, if a household is self-paying for a motel. They live in overcrowded conditions, specifically in a single room occupancy or efficiency apartment in which there reside more than 2 persons, or lives in a larger housing unit in which there reside more than 1.5 persons per room, as defined by the U.S. Census Bureau, or they are exiting a publicly funded institution or system of care, such as a healthcare facility, mental health facility, foster care, or other youth facility or corrections program or institution. And finally, otherwise lives in housing that has characteristics associated with instability and an increased risk of homelessness as identified in the recipient's approved consolidated plan. Ultimately, within all the eligibility categories, it boils down to, will this person or family become literally homeless, but for the homelessness prevention assistance that we offer? And in fact, per the California HCD homelessness prevention policy, the subrecipient's policies and procedures must have a triage procedure that ensures the project serves only those who will experience literal homelessness without ESG-HP assistance. So let's talk about, switch gears and discuss the services that are offered by rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention. As a reminder, both rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention offer the exact same services, but to 2 very different populations. Again, for rapid rehousing, it's those that are unhoused. For homelessness prevention, it's those that will imminently lose their housing and are at 30% AMI or under. Put another way, the costs of homelessness prevention are only eligible to the extent that the assistance is necessary to help the program participant regain stability in the program participant's current permanent housing or move into other permanent housing and achieve stability in that housing. Rapid rehousing assistance may be used to provide housing relocation and stabilization services and short and/or medium-term rental assistance as necessary to help a homeless individual or family move as quickly as possible into permanent housing and achieve stability in that housing. In all, the eligible activities fall under 2 categories: housing relocation and stabilization. Housing relocation will include monies spent to either house an individual or household or help them to remain stably housed. Stabilization generally encompasses housing problem-solving activities that are paid for by the grant. So, what are the activities? First off, we've got rental assistance, the short-term version, which is up to 3 months in any 3-year period. Then we have medium-term rental assistance, which can be for up to 24 months in any 3-year period. We've got a one-time payment for up to 6 months of rent, including late fees, rental application fees, security deposits, which must be less than or equal to 2 months rent. If you've got a security deposit that's worth 3 months rent, the grant can only pay for the 2 months. And utility deposits. Utility payments up to 24 months in a 36-month period. Utility arrears up to 6 months, and it counts towards the 24 months of utility payments. Last month's rent, which counts towards the 24 months of rental assistance. Legal services, and a quick note on legal services. Legal services are limited to those subjects that affect an individual or household's ability to be housed or remain housed. So, for example, resolving custody and child support orders may be something that legal services would pay for because it would determine the area median income and the income of the household. Moving costs, one instance, including storage fees for up to 3 months. The cost of breaking a lease in response to an emergency transfer plan. And with the emergency transfer plan and breaking a lease, this does not count toward the 24-month cap in any 3-year period. I want to make a note that rental assistance, with the exception of arrears payments, must meet several requirements. It must meet fair market rent standards. It must meet rent reasonableness standards. It must meet minimum habitability standards. And you must have a written, signed, legally binding lease. All right, other services that can be offered: housing search and placement, housing stability case management, again, 24 months within a 36-month period, mediation between landlord and the person the client is living with, or the person the client is living with, to prevent a loss of housing, credit repair. Please note this does not include payment or modification of debt. This is credit counseling services, volunteer incentives, hazard pay. If you're going to be paying hazard pay, you must have an existing agency policy that outlines under what circumstances hazard pay will be offered and in what amounts. Training, PPE, vaccine incentives, furniture and household furnishings. This one always kind of is a little bit sticky because this is not meant to be furniture or household furnishings that are provided to clients for their permanent use. It's meant to be provided to the agency for use by clients while they are receiving services from the agency. But overall, these things go to the agency, not to the client. Landlord incentives, sponsor-based rental assistance, tenant-based rental assistance, project-based rental assistance, and renter's insurance. So that's rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention. And this is a really short presentation today. We wanted to have time for Q&A. So we're going to go ahead and move on to see whether there are any questions that we can answer about the components, either client eligibility or what the funds can pay for. Did we have any questions that came up in the Q&A?
No, we do not.
Well, now is the time. If folks would like to ask questions, Shavana and I and Chris, we're all here to help you, and Anthony. We'll give folks just another moment here in case they're typing their questions in.
Looks like we had a question about the 2022 ESG contracts. And if it is under the BOS, we are still awaiting. If it was on the recently awarded, you should have already received something regarding that. As we have, believe, unless there was an exception, we've covered all of them. They've all gone through the contract writing process. So reach out to your rep if that is the case. Otherwise, we anticipate the others will take probably another month and a half to get the announcement and get them routed through our legal and contracts division.
Thanks. All right, few questions. Can you use ESG dollars to rent a single room from a private landlord?
Shivana, you want to take that one?
Yes, you can. Again, as Kristen stated, you still will need a legally binding lease between the landlord and the program participant.
Does fair market rent and rent reasonableness come into play if only providing a security deposit and application fees? I am assuming, Tuesday, this question is about homelessness prevention. Might need Tuesday to answer in the chat before we can answer the question, but I'm pretty sure
Oh.
it's homelessness prevention.
So do they come into play when you're looking at deposit and application fees? No, they do not.
Great. That is what Tuesday meant. She did confirm. Tuesday. If you're a client in Rapid Housing, why would you have late fees?
You may have past due rent and late fees, and that is part of what the grant can pay for as a means of promoting your ability or promoting a client's ability to get into future housing.
Kristen, I would add there if, let's say, if the agency is paying the rent late on a rapid rehousing client, ESG cannot be used to pay those late fees.
Yeah.
If it is the agency's fault.
Great.
Can rapid rehousing clients receive funding for a past due water bill or maybe even other utilities if you'd like to go in that direction?
Yes, absolutely. It is up to 6 months that can be awarded.
Excellent. I know I missed one here in the middle from Miriam, so I'm gonna go back up because it was longer and it just kept bumping off my screen. How are the services available to households 21 days away from losing housing different from the services available to those that are 14 or at imminent risk of losing their housing?
The services are the same that would be offered. It's just two different categories, two different classifications of clients that we're looking at. So the services are the same.
This is a great question from Ava. Due to housing prices with FMR ever go away and just let rent reasonableness be in play? That's a great question, Ava. I don't think any one of us here can answer that. That's a question. But if I'm going on my history of being in this field for 23 years, no, they're not going to ever just go away. There is a push within HUD to change the ESG final rule. We have been in interim rules since 2011. They have been working on a final rule. And we did see that FMR was not used during ESGCV. And I think there is some interest in HUD to go in that direction. So it's definitely possible, but it's not anything that's likely at the moment.
And Chris, I see that Angelina has a second part on her question there about can the bill only be 6 months behind from today? We're just talking about 6 months in general. This is the ability to get somebody into a home, and they need to be able to get their utilities hooked up for that to be decent, safe, affordable housing. Maybe not affordable, but decent and safe housing. Who knows with utilities?
Sorry, I did not see that was a two-parter there. Sorry, Angelina. That is on me. I'm not seeing any more questions. Do we have any last questions folks want to ask today? Thank you. You are welcome, Angelina. Right, Siobhan, I think we can close out.
Okay, well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Hope this session was very informative to you. Again, a reminder that as you close out, there will be a survey to pop up If you could please answer it, and thank you again for your attendance. We'll see you next week.